Assalamu alaikum and good morning. Welcome in the session. As you know, these days we are studying the American democracy assistance in the Arab Gulf countries in the wake of 9/11 events. And so far, we have discussed the democracy promotion. We have discussed democracy promotion in American foreign policy, and we have also discussed how there was a shift in American foreign policy towards the Middle East after 9/11. We have also discussed the awareness campaign, which was launched at the very broad level in the Gulf countries. Today, we start our discussion with diplomatic front. What activities were carried out on the diplomatic front by the Americans to support democracy in the Arab Gulf states? The U.S. ambassador to Kuwait and his team visited the Vaniyas often. So Kuwait is also among the Arab Gulf states. As you know, there are six countries, six states in the Arab Gulf: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and UAE. So Kuwait is one of them. And the American ambassador to Kuwait and his team visited Diwaniyas often. Diwaniyas are evening political salons. Evening political salons means people get together in the evening and they discuss politics. So it is called Diwaniya in Kuwait. They talked with people about how to develop democracy in Kuwait. American diplomats talked with Kuwaiti people about how to develop democracy in Kuwait. During the 2008 US election campaign, American diplomats in the UAE carried out many activities. They arranged debates, video conferences, seminars, and outreach programs. So these sorts of activities are carried out to spread democratic awareness, democratic norms, values. The purpose was to highlight the value of electoral democracy because it was these activities were held at the occasion of the elections in the United States. The purpose was to highlight the value of electoral democracy. Electoral democracy means a democratic aspect which relates to elections, how elections are campaigned, how elections are held, how election campaigns are launched and conducted, how elections are contested, these things. It is called electoral democracy. Many different kinds of audiences were reached through these activities. Debates were arranged for university students and high school students. The debates focused on topics related to democracy. Video conferences were held for journalists. Video conferences are also held for students. Participants interacted with speakers in the United States. Online, there were online interactions also. Seminars covered topics like women's role in politics. They also covered civic participation. Civic participation means when common citizens take part in collective matters, collective issues, collective activities. From the American president to the secretaries, deputy secretaries, ambassadors, and diplomats, everyone kept the diplomatic effort active. So these American officials, bureaucrats, diplomats, they were taking part in the diplomatic efforts to support and promote and facilitate democracy in the Middle East, including the Arab Gulf countries. In their speeches, they highlighted almost every aspect of democratization. They emphasized the need for democratization. Their speeches often included philosophical explanations of these issues, philosophical explanation of the issues related to democracy and democratization in the region. The president and his officials responded to all major arguments against democracy promotion in the Middle East. So there have been arguments against democracy promotion in the Middle East. So President Bush and his team, they responded to all major arguments against democracy promotion in the Middle East. They also responded to criticisms. Middle Eastern governments were repeatedly asked to introduce reforms. So American officials, American president repeatedly asked again and again to the Middle Eastern governments to introduce democratic reforms, human rights reforms. Western governments were asked to cooperate in promoting democracy in the Middle East. Western governments, European governments, Australia, Canada, they were asked to support and promote democracy in the Middle East, in the Arab world. The president and senior officials rarely missed a chance to emphasize the need for promoting democracy in the region. So, any opportunity they had, any chance they had, they pushed the democracy agenda in the region. They expressed strong belief in the value of democratic governance. American president and other American officials, they expressed strong belief in the value of democratic governance. At many international forums, both administration officials explained, Bush administration officials explained, at many international forums, Bush administration officials explained why democratization of the Middle East is important. They linked American security to democratization. Americans linked security of America to democratization in the Middle East, democratization in the Gulf, in the Arab countries. They linked peace and stability in the Middle East to addressing political grievances. They linked peace and stability in the Middle East to addressing political grievances. These grievances belong to people living under authoritarian regimes. So they believed since there is a lack of democracy in the Middle East, in the Arab countries, so people have grievances, people have complaints against the governments, against the global community. So there is a need to address those complaints, to address those grievances in order to have stability in the Middle East. These grievances belonged to people living under authoritarian regimes. Authoritarian regimes are which are not democratic, which are not elected, which are not popular. At the diplomatic front, the administration tried to create better understanding of democratic politics. Here, in American government also, is also called American administration. So when we say here in this study administration, it means the Bush administration, the Bush government, George Bush. At the diplomatic front, the administration tried to create better understanding of democratic politics. It tried to highlight the benefits of a free economy. So the American government, the American officials used diplomacy for promotion of democratic agenda and for promotion of free economy in the Middle East through diplomacy. It tried to highlight the benefits of individual freedoms. It means the American government, the Bush administration, tried to highlight the benefits of individual freedoms, freedoms of citizens. The strong emphasis on reform aimed to put diplomatic pressure on Middle Eastern regimes. The strong emphasis on reform aimed to put diplomatic pressure on Middle Eastern regimes. It also aimed to encourage Arab people to raise their voices. The Bush administration also aimed to encourage Arab people to raise their voices for reforms, to raise their voices for democracy, to raise their voices for human rights. It means the American government wanted the Arab people to demand democracy, to demand human rights, to demand freedoms from their governments. It encouraged them to demand political rights. It encouraged them to demand reforms. Bush and his colleagues also criticized regimes for human rights violations, for corruption, and for bad governance. So, the American government criticized the Arab governments, the governments in the Middle Eastern countries for these reasons, for violations of human rights, for corruption, and for bad governance. The Saudi government was criticized openly. American government openly criticized the Saudi government. Saudi Arabia was repeatedly designated as a country of particular concern for violations of religious freedom. US embassies in the Gulf also pushed the democratic agenda. There are American embassies in these countries, in the Arab Gulf countries. These embassies also played their role to promote democratic agenda in these countries. American diplomats encouraged Gulf governments to introduce reforms in politics, economy, and education. American diplomats encouraged reforms in other areas as well, in other sectors also. Political, economic, and education sectors. The Bush administration followed a gradual approach for change. The Bush administration followed a gradual approach for change. As we already have discussed, the Americans did not push democracy through military action in the Arab countries, in these countries, in the Gulf countries. Rather, the approach was gradual change, gradual reforms, democratic reforms in these Gulf countries. It did not openly threaten the authoritarian rulers in the Gulf countries. The administration wanted to promote elections in the Gulf. It also wanted to strengthen parliamentary practices there. Parliamentary practices means, first of all, establishment of a parliament, then strengthening parliament so that the parliament becomes more and more powerful, and this way people get more and more relief, people get more and more freedom, and people get more and more power in politics, more and more more and more share in politics. Many steps were taken for this purpose. Training programs were started to promote parliamentary values, parliamentary reforms in the Gulf countries. Exchange programs were also launched. Technical support was given whenever needed. Political reform became more important for funding. Political reform became more important for funding. Middle East Policy Initiative MEPI increased funds over the years to match this priority. In electoral politics and parliamentary sport, the main goal was clear. What was the goal? It was to expand the role of parliaments. The goal was to expand the role of parliaments so that parliaments become strong. The goal was also to expand the role of consultative councils in legislation and governance. The goal was also to expand the role of consultative councils in legislation and governance. Consultative councils are there in many Arab countries, including the Arab Gulf countries. They cannot make laws, but they can advise the government. So the government sometimes consults them. They are consultative councils. The goal was also to expand the role of consultative councils in legislation and governance. Programs were funded to improve the capacity of these consultative bodies. Members of Majlis Ashuras were given training. Members of Majlis Shura means parliament. Our Pakistani parliament is also, its name is Majlis Shura. So there are parliaments in the Gulf countries. So members of those parliaments were provided training. They were also provided technical assistance. Technical assistance means, for example, how to uh, prepare a bill, how to prepare a draft for legislation. So, how to prepare the agendas, how to do such things. This is called technical assistance. A US funded NGO arranged training for parliamentarians in Bahrain. So, Bahraini parliamentarians were trained, and the training was funded by an NGO in the United States. It also trained political societies in Bahrain. So there are not no political parties. Political parties are not allowed. Governments do not allow people to have political parties, but political societies exist in Bahrain. Political societies, they are almost like political parties. For stronger parliamentary politics, US partners train members and staff of the Central Municipal Council in Qatar. For stronger parliamentary politics, US partners trained members and staff of the Central Municipal Council in Qatar. They trained the Advisory Council in Qatar as well. They also trained the members and staff of Majlis Shura in Oman. In the UAE, American officials kept encouraging the government. They asked for broader elections in municipalities. Americans asked the Qatari government, in the Emirati government, for broader elections in municipalities. They asked for broader elections for student councils. They also asked for broader elections for the Federal National Council (FNC). Two Bahraini parliamentarians were invited to the United States. They held consultations with the US Congress and with American state legislatures. Bahraini parliamentarians were invited. They visited the United States and they held consultations with the American parliamentarians and American state legislatures. State legislature means there are 50 states in the United States. They have their own assemblies, uh, like we have assemblies in our provinces, Punjab Assembly, Sindh Assembly. So similarly, the 50 American states, they have their own assemblies. They are called state legislatures. So the Bahraini parliamentarians who visited the United States on their invitation, they also met the members of the state legislatures in America. American officials sometimes joined Bahraini parliamentarians in their open meetings. These meetings were held for ordinary citizens. A program was arranged in Bahrain to introduce the latest voting technologies. The aim was to make election officials familiar with modern polling procedures. So the aim of this training was to familiarize Bahrainis with modern polling procedures. Polling means voting. So there are different procedures for voting. One is very common, which is also practiced in Pakistan. That is the ballot. Ballot, vote ki parchi. So ballot is used in Pakistan. In some other countries, electronic machines are used, electronic voting machines, EVMs, and these are the different procedures for polling, for voting. The purpose was to make the electoral process more transparent. Transparency is important for credible elections. So, if there's no transparency, then the elections become doubtful and they become controversial. So, procedures which ensure transparency are required for strengthening democracy. Members of Majlis Shura in Oman engaged the public on environmental issues. This was done through a funded program. In Qatar, American officials met prospective election candidates. American officials met prospective election candidates. They held roundtable discussions with them. Qatar's Permanent Election Committee received assistance from a US partner. This help was given during the third election for the Central Municipal Council in 2007. The aim was to train the candidates. Another aim was to increase voter awareness. Before the 2008 elections in Kuwait, a voter education program was funded. Candidates were given help in planning and developing their election campaigns. US officials in Kuwait conducted several activities because the elections occurred at the same time as American elections. Video conferences were held in two universities. These conferences connected Kuwaiti students with American academics. Elections in both countries were discussed in detail in these conferences. Strengthening civil society and media. A strong civil society is needed to make any society more democratic. Civil society means activists, which address activists who address the political issues, social issues, collective issues, human rights issues, for example. And NGOs are also considered a part of civil society because NGOs work for social development, social change, political development, political change, these things. So, civil society for promotion of democracy is very important. So, if a country has a strong democracy, it means it has a strong civil society. And if a country is authoritarian, it means the civil society is weak. So, when a country is going to facilitate democracy in another country, the strengthening of civil society, the promotion of civil society is also required, it is also helpful. A strong civil society is needed to make any society more democratic. The Bush administration also saw this as very important. It made this a key part of its democracy promotion work in the Gulf. They planned different strategies for this purpose. Americans planned different strategies for promotion of civil society in the Arab Gulf states. Programs were also started according to the social and cultural needs of the Gulf countries. In many Gulf countries, civil society organizations are not allowed by law. Law does not allow in many of these countries. Civil society organizations are not allowed. NGOs are not allowed. In other countries, these organizations are allowed, but they work under very strict legal rules. Where they exist, the NGOs exist, civil society organizations exist, they work under very strict legal rules. So there are many restrictions. In Afghanistan, for example, they are not allowing NGOs to work. They have restricted them. Many of NGOs, foreign NGOs, have left Afghanistan in last years, in previous years. So similarly, in the authoritarian Arab countries, there's problem for civil society activists, civil society organizations, CSOs, and NGOs face many restrictions. In many countries, NGOs cannot be formed; they are not allowed. The U.S. government under Bush worked on many fronts. The American government worked on many fronts in the Middle East, in the Arab Gulf states, for facilitation of reforms and democracy. It tried to raise awareness about why a strong civil society is important. The American government tried to raise awareness about why a strong civil society is important. It said that civil society is essential for social development and political development. The American officials said, the American government said that civil society is essential, civil society is important for social development, it is important for political development. The US government provided diplomatic support, the American government provided moral support, it also provided financial support, and it also provided technical support. One of the goals of this sport was to strengthen civil society in the Gulf states. Over time, Middle East Policy Initiative MEPI started giving more attention to the civil society sector. MEPI supported a project in Bahrain. This project aimed to reform the civil society law. The goal was to reduce the distance between the government and civil society. In January 2008, 56 teachers were trained in Bahrain. Americans trained these teachers. This training was part of an American funded civic education program. Small grants were given to NGOs in Kuwait to strengthen them. The US Embassy in Kuwait started informal meetings every 2 months in 2007. American Embassy in Kuwait held bi-monthly meetings, informal meetings with the local people. People from NGOs attended these meetings. Diplomats also attended these meetings. The US ambassador in Oman encouraged reformers. Reformers, who are reformers? Reformers are those people who support reform, who promote reform, who demand reforms, and who carry out reforms, who introduce reforms. So the American ambassador in Oman encouraged reformers. He also encouraged civil society activists. He invited them to different embassy events from time to time. American officials in Qatar held informal roundtable discussions. They highlighted the importance of civic participation. American officials in Qatar highlighted the importance of civic participation. Civic participation means when citizens, when people, common people participates in common social and political issues. Exchange programs were arranged for Qatari civil society activists. Exchange programs were also arranged for potential NGO leaders. In Saudi Arabia, US speaker programs were jointly hosted. In Saudi Arabia, American speaker programs were jointly hosted. It means speakers from America visited Saudi Arabia and they delivered speeches over there on democracy and reforms. These programs were held by the United States and local civil society organizations. The purpose was to support the development of civil society. Promoting civil society became more important over time. Promoting civic education also became more important. In 1997, one third of US democracy funds went to civil society. By 2002, this amount increased to 48%. The American government tried to promote an independent media. So I think we should stop here. So far, we have discussed what activities were carried out, what efforts were made by the Americans to support civil society in the Arab Gulf countries. From here onwards, we will discuss how Americans supported independent media in the Arab Gulf states. So we will discuss this topic in the next session, next class. Uh, I close YouTube and I join you back on Google Meet.